I've been asked before about lyrics and text for songs, and how do you write them, or what's most important, music or lyrics, and I think there's really a very specific rule for it. I think it's just how it comes. I mean, it's easier to write lyrics to music which is already set down, rather than the other way around, for whatever reason, whether it's because you already know what kind of emotions go into a song or not.
Rob builds his life on the grand exchange, where a spike or where a lowdown drives a life of man and wife plus three.
There's loads of good musicians about, and I don't necessarily count myself amongst them, but there's not that many good lyric writers. You know, not a lot of thought goes into writing text nowadays. It's all about money and producing and as fast as possible and making money off it, and the audience, I mean, you know, the general public generally listens less and less to the meanings behind songs. That's what I always like about people who listen to rock music. They tend to think about, you know, what they're listening to a lot more than your average music listener.
Rob builds his life on the grand exchange, where a spike or where a lowdown drives a life of man and wife plus three.
You know, when I'm writing lyrics, I actually tend to like writing stories. One of my hobbies was actually writing stories, so it feels very natural for me to try and do it through music. Note is actually a 3-part story, and there's going to be 3 songs with the title Note 1, Note 2 and Note 3. And it tells the story of a family in various stages of dysfunction. The first one focusing on Rob, who is the husband of a woman and who has 3 kids, and he's quite rich, and he makes his living off the stock exchange, and just one day, you know, there's a crash, and an economic crash, and his particular stock goes bottoms out, red line dives, and he throws himself off a bridge. And the whole song, Note 1, is based around his suicide note and giving all the reasons and excuses why he would leave his family behind, and his wife, who eventually becomes a drunk, and his 3 kids.
Greece made a fool of me, praying on my family. Took a while for me to see, can't help but let you down. Fell into the world's that sea, nothing in the line, my feet could be not adultery. Can't help but let you down.
The oldest one we focus on, Note 2, who's Steve, who has raised his brother and sister. While their mum was basically, you know, passed out on drugs or alcohol or whatever vice people turn to when they're in depression.
Well, let's listen to the life of Steve. Since then, Dad died, he's alive. His mama.
And you know, he's done his job, and he's thinking, what next? You know, he's raised his brother, and his brother's doing really well for himself, and he's standing on the edge of this bridge, just thinking and praying. He says, you know, I've got no reason to live. I've got nothing to live for. God, show me if I can live for something.
He walks the streets all alone with the faces, the mask, all the loathing they must feel for a guy with his past. Been down the street and he thinks it may lead to the way his father solves all the problems his family had made.
For something. And Note 3, which is actually being worked out now, I don't want to give too much away from, but actually I'm having great fun writing it, because it was just a random idea which I had when playing around on a new borrowed guitar, Gibson Les Paul. And while playing around, I went to Kolbjeg and recorded some bass lines with my friend Ramek. Cheers, Ramek. It's going quite well. So, okay. Mine. I'm hoping to have that finished quite soon. But I mean, writing lyrics is a process, and you need to have an idea. And I don't know where the idea of Rob and his family came from, but I mean, if you just look around, the whole world is focusing now on what you can get, how much you can get, and how fast you can get it, and it inevitably leads to people being extremely sad with themselves. And you know, suicide rates are up, and the amount of people I've heard who have been on the edge of suicide, and the reasons for it, I think the reasons inspired Note and Rob and his family, and later Steve.
Know you're all bound to be much better off without this grief. Can never stand to see you bleed. Can't ever let you down. Final words are not my thing. Memories destined to bring. It goes